Good morning, everybody. The weather is not behaving today. I was going to go out of town and it just keeps raining and it's just, I don't know what to do. So I'm going to make you a nice intensive tour of the Frankfurt Kaiserdom, also known as St. Bartholomews. So this church was built as it is in the late 1300s, early 1400s, with the steeple being built around 1415. And it sits on the site of a church that was here as far back as 680. And they found this out when they did archaeological diggings here in the 1990s when it was closed. So they're always doing work on this, inside or outside. So normally you'd be able to climb up to the top of the steeple, which is like 323 steps. And the view is really cool. But you have to not be claustrophobic because you're sharing the spiral steps. You go in hit this door here with the people going up and the people coming down. So Madern Gerthener, our city architect, is well known for this kind of curly Q looking, it's called tracery, and he does this with the windows too. So these over here are pretty plain, but he's done tracery windows in churches all over Frankfurt. Madern Gerthener also made our pretty little building back here, the linen house. So this was made for the cloth merchants of Frankfurt to store their linen, because they didn't want to put their cloth, their expensive cloth, in a wooden building. So this up here is the Shearn, and we have our new Stadthouse here. And if you're looking at this and saying, well, why is the bottom of it so plain? It's because back in the Middle Ages, you used to have buildings and like little stores and stands all around the bottom of your churches, because people came for pilgrimages and they would always come and they'd want to buy something. So you see this in Heidelberg, you see this over at the Liebfrauen Church. So it's really common still in some churches to have this today. So they're doing construction here, it's a little bit loud. So we'll go ahead and go inside. Yeah, there we go. We'll go past that real quick. Put my mask on now. This is the little dome museum. I've got the video about that. But before we go inside, let's look at this picture. If you've got the Rick Steves Germany guidebook, he used to write that this church was destroyed and rebuilt. Now, I don't think that this church looks like it's destroyed. For one, the steeple is all intact. You could still climb up on the steeple after the war. The church is missing its roof. You can see a better picture down here of it. And down here, the inside. They had this reopened fairly quickly. And we're gonna see, this is like a little bombing shelter that they built to protect an altar. And I'll show you that when we get inside. So back in here, this is where the Jewish cemetery is that we went to on Batonstrasse. This is the Dominikaner Church. This nice triangle here is where the Museum of Modern Art is, which is still a triangle. And this street here goes straight up to the Kleinmarkthalle. This right here, that's the, I just showed you the linen house, and the river is right here. So this right here is an excellent example of tracery. Now it's called tracery or Maßwerk in German because the architect would have a piece like plaster on the floor. He would draw a design or squishy. And the stonemasons would go away and take the little pieces of stone and bring them back and see if they go together. Now they've enclosed this, which is a little bit of a shame, but you know, they have to do things to protect the churches. You have some nice vaulting here and this Baroque altar. So this would be from the 1700s. This modern art has been here for quite a few years. I'm not sure why. It's personally not my favorite, but they don't let me pick out the artwork for the church. So here we go. You can see it's very, very pink. This shows all the former outlines of the foundations of the earlier churches. So here we've got our very first church around 680, and the little red spot is the grave of a little girl that they found. And I'll show that to you when you get inside. Charlemagne comes to Frankfurt in 794, and the church is then this yellow outline here. And then later on, his sons and grandsons make it a little bit bigger. So it becomes this part here, the Salvator Church. And then in 1356, Frankfurt gets declared the election city for the Holy Roman Emperor, and it gets this outline that it has today. This yellow here, this was a nice passageway to the palace, because out the door this way was a little palace. Also since about 680. So this crucifixion group is done by an artist named Backofen, and he did this around 1509, and he specialized in crucifixion groups. So when we did the Peterskirchhof on my video, if you've seen that, he has one there too. He's got some sculptures in Mainz and in Eltville. Now where the little round brass plaque is a tiny piece of the cross. When we look at this, we can see who the good thief is and who the bad thief is. The good thief is over here. No, that's the bad thief, sorry. I don't have my glasses on. He's looking away from Jesus, and he's modern dressed. And the good thief is over here. He's looking at Jesus, and he looks basically like Jesus, the way he's dressed. Now we have our skull. So this way you can see which way is north, east, south, and west. And up in the steeple here, we have all the bells, including Gloriosa. She's almost 12 tons. And she is the second largest bell in Germany. She survived World War II. All the bells in Germany all got sent to Hamburg, where they had like a cemetery for bells. And they started the war with about 60,000 bells and ended with about 10,000. So here, left and right, where you see the big pillars, there's 3 on one side and 3 on the other. This would have been the size of the church when Charlemagne was here in 794. So that's a pretty decent sized church for that time period, I think. He had a synod of 60 bishops here for 6 months, and they made all kinds of decisions about, I don't know what all, whatever emperors and kings do. But they also mentioned Frankfurt, the well-known town of Frankfurt, or the celebrated town. And that's when we date our birthday from, even though the town was already here, obviously. So down here, we've got the outline of a very small church, including the grave of a little girl. Right here. So they think she was about 5 years old and buried here around 680. We'll go over this direction. I always have to remember that people are in here praying. Oh, the Pieta is done. They were working on her before. They got her this all cleaned up. On my video about the Dome Museum, they were in there working on this. So this was done by a local artist around 1914. His name is Caspar Weiss. And he has got another Pieta in Höchst and St. Joseph's. So if you saw my video about Höchst, I think it's in there. So this looks really good since they cleaned it up. I mean, people come in and they all want to touch it. There's usually lots of candles lit here. All these windows are all industrial glass, but occasionally you find like little pieces from the earlier stained glass windows. So there's flowers up there on the left and right. The little blues and pinks. And this is all we've got for World War II. There's that one little square. A lot of churches may have their members listed. And this is the baptismal font. This is Florentine marble, and this dates from late 1600s. That's John the Baptist up here. So up here in the vaulting, you can see there's John the Baptist there in the middle. This pretty vaulting. Tracery. Now up on the walls are shields, and these are shields from our merchant family. So when they would die, these shields would be put on their casket and they would be brought in here. And at one time there was probably 120 of these shields in here, and they were destroyed in the war. This is all we have are these two. But here you can also see the lines from the earlier arches in the church. And this here, there were two towers in here. And this was the door into the tower. And this other one here, and they took this vaulting out and put the vaulting in the 1400s. So they've got this area closed, but we can still admire the beautiful organ. So this is not the largest organ in Germany, but it is one of the largest. We've got something like 8,950 pipes, and it's magnificent. I love being in here when they play. And over here on the windows, I don't know if you can see. Let's see if I can make this right there. You've got some binoculars, and over here you've got some stuff. These are logos from the companies that paid to have these windows put in after the war. Now this big tall thing here, this baldachin, has got a piece of St. Bartholomew's skull in it. And this is why everybody came to the church. Every church had to have a relic. To have a relic of an apostle was a pretty big deal back in the Middle Ages. And Frankfurt had this as like, whoa. And so people came here. And of course, it coincided with their fall market, which is at the end of August. So people came for the market and then came to worship too. Now back in this little chapel here is the election chapel, and that's where the emperors would have been elected. So in 1356, Charles IV decided that Frankfurt was going to be the election city for the Holy Roman Emperor, and he writes this document called the Golden Bulla, and he says these 7 guys are going to be the electors, and they're going to come to Frankfurt and decide who the next emperor is going to be. So pretty big deal for Frankfurt. We made a lot of money off of this, and we had 30 elections here in this church. Then in the late 1500s, they decided to have the coronation here too, and we had 10 coronations. And up around these walls would have been a second and a third floor gallery. On the other side, you can see where the doors were. So usually, if there's nobody in there praying, you can usually get back into that little chapel. Let's go down here. Now this choir area was definitely put on around 1410, 1420, and it has the life of Bartholomew painted on its walls. Bartholomew, the story says, in the Legenda Aurelia, that he went to India after Jesus died. And after that, he went to Armenia. And in Armenia, he cured the king's daughter of schizophrenia or demons. And the king was so grateful, he made everybody in the country get baptized. And so Armenia is our very first Christian country. Well, the king's brother was not happy about this. And so he and the pagan priests got Bartholomew and they skinned him alive. And the story then says he picks up his skin and walks away. So he's up on the wall with a blue robe on, right there. And you can see that he's got his skin hanging over his arms, with his hands and feet. And if you've been to the Vatican, you've seen Bartholomew. He's always depicted with his skin hanging over his arms. Saints are always depicted with their instruments of torture. So these wooden stools here and here at the very ends, these are original. They're from the late 1300s. The other choir stools are a little bit earlier. And we've only got one emperor buried here, and he's back there in the back. So this is Gunther from Schwarzberg, and he was only emperor for about 40 days. Look at these little altars. Now, remember when we were looking at that picture out and before we came in the church, and I said this is a little bombing shelter they built? This is where it was. This is called the Maria Sloth Altar, or the Dormition of Mary. If I can get my gimbal in here, I can. So this is all stone with some terracotta on top. And they don't know who did this, but they think early 1400s. And it shows Mary on her deathbed surrounded by all the apostles. Now, because it's stone and this terracotta is too delicate and it's too heavy, they just put sandbags around the whole altar, and then they made that little bombing shelter. So that's why these walls look different than the other walls. This church is red sandstone. This has all been painted on. I know it looks like enamel, but it's not. And then the windows are by a British firm called Dixon, and these date from about 1880. Those would have been taken out of the church during the war. Now, if you go on one of the tours of the cathedral, they do take you back in there where you can see this altar a little bit better. Let's take a peek at the organ again because it's just so magnificent. So the next two altars we're going to look at were put together by Caspar Weiss, the same guy that made that Pieta. So Frankfurt had a big fire here at the church in 1867, and all the altars burned up. So the priest that was in charge of the church, Father Munzenberger, was a collector of altar pieces, and he had Caspar Weiss put these all together. So when you look at this, like the predella is way too low. It should be up high. The perspective is completely wrong. But we do like to joke that they are having some apple wine from a Bembel, an apple wine glass. And all their faces, you can see that they're different eras because of the colors of their faces. And the wings, the doors, are late 1800s. This one, the same thing. When you look at their faces, you can see that they're all different complexions. They were all made at completely different times. Now the statues fit on here. On the other one, they didn't. But down here, with the saints, their heads are all different sizes. Everything just doesn't quite fit. They kind of look like they fit, but when you get closer, you see that they don't. Let's look over here again at this one. Can you see that the statues do not fit? Now over here, we've got a Van Dyck called the Lamentation of Christ. The light kind of glares off of it. So we'll come down. Make this bigger a little bit. So he painted this in the 1670s. It's belonged to the church since sometime in the 1800s. I like the frame. So up here on this beautiful Rosetta window, you can see the little tiny pieces of purple and red glass. That are from the old windows. Now there are a lot of people buried here in this church, but you had to have been somebody special. I like the skull with the wings. Here you got the skull, and you have the hourglass and the wings. Time flies. These are mainly from the Turner-Taxis family. These massive doors are kind of cool. That's another nice skull. When I've had a lot of kids on my tours, they're always asking me if that's a real skull. You got the chalice with the host. Looks like it's either Saint Christopher. Yeah, carrying something. The Turner-Taxis family, when they were here, they didn't like Frankfurt, and Frankfurt didn't like them. Frankfurt was a Protestant city, and the Turner-Taxis family were Catholic. Now I know you can't see it because they've got this these screens up to protect the windows, but the one that on the left over here was donated by the Nestle family, because Mr. Nestle is from Frankfurt. So this is a knight from Schwanheim. He's on his lion, because lions symbolize bravery and courage. So men get lions to stand on. We ladies get something different. But he does have this swan in his arms. So this is the Holtzhausen family. We can tell by these 3 roses up here. They donated all kinds of stuff here to the church. They were a really big merchant family, very, very prosperous. And he's got his lion. And what does Gudula Holtzhausen have? She's got a dog. Dogs symbolize loyalty and faithfulness, and so women get dogs. Now, when you're in churches, you want to look and see what kind of dogs they have, because it might be a greyhound, it might be a big bulldog or a little lap dog. This dog, though, is in about 4 places here in the church. Again, we've got our 3 roses. Remember when we did the Nuremberg Passage, and you asked about the guy with the hand holding the bone? This is it. This is the Holtzhausen. Now this vaulting is about 30 meters up. And those big capstones that are up there are actually about 1 meter across. So they're quite large. And over here, this hole, this would be a Pfingstloch or a Pentecost Hall. Now we have one of those in St. Leonard's. We have one of those in the Alta Nikolai. You'll find these in churches built before 1500s. On Pentecost, they would let doves come down through there, or little pieces of burning brush. So look for those the next time you're in Europe. I look for them when I was in Spain too. I get excited when I find them, because nobody really knows about them. Now, when I've got kids on my tours, I usually tell them we have a real Frankenstein buried in Frankfurt. And this is him. This is Prince Bishop Frankenstein. And he's buried up in the choir area. This is a life-size statue. He was about 4'9" or 1'38", and he wore big high heel shoes. Those of you who are older probably wore shoes like this to the disco back in the 70s. The big platform shoes. And they found his grave with a skeleton, with his shoes. So up here you can see where the door goes out, where there would have been that second floor gallery. Now Prince Bishop Frankenstein donated this picture in the 1680s, and it shows Bartholomew being skinned alive. But I think it's kind of funny because it looks like he's being skinned alive by Indians. It's like, well, they've got this legenda aurelia that Bartholomew went to India. And in 1680, they didn't know that India and America were not the same country yet. You can see the earlier arches in here. Here's that dog again from the Holtzhausens. Right here. So what's interesting about this little girl's grave is that she had some lovely gold rings, beautiful gold earrings. She had a piece of vellum over her chest with a gold cross on it. But her parents also buried her with some pagan items. So around 680, people were sort of Christian, but not quite all the way. You know, you got your little girl, you want to make sure that she's taken care of. So here you can write a prayer and the nuns will pray for you. Go back out. Different vaultings. So this was the former porch of the Dome Museum. So watch my YouTube video about the Dome Museum and I go through here and show you all the different things that are in this. Okay? So I'm going to come back to this picture again. These people are here. Another nice picture of the tracery. And let's go outside. I don't really know if we can see any more outside because it's kind of loud. But we'll walk around the outside of the church. And I can take my mask off. I was sneaking with my mask off there for a little bit. It's still kind of windy and the skies are gray. It rained all night long. So you can get a view of this one entry door. I just feel like they've been working on this church ever since I've lived here, either inside or out. But that's how it is with these old churches. They have to always be doing something to them. Either the roofs or the heating, doing the altars. So this would have been the main entrance to come in and out of the church. It's kind of hard to see everybody, just they've got that pigeon netting up there. And everything's kind of far away. You have these doors, these great big huge brass doors. Let's see if we can see it better from back here. All the zoom. Okay, let's go around to the back. If you've got a skilled trade like stone carver in Germany, I think that you can kind of make a lot of money. So this is the Paulaner back here. Chain restaurant, but they've got decent schnitzels and stuff. So this area back here is all 1950s architecture. This was Frankfurt's old town that was lost in the war. So this crucifixion group that's back here, I can get a better view of it. This is a copy of the crucifixion group that's inside. So the one that's inside used to be outside, but it was being damaged by the war. And so in the 1900s, early 1900s, they brought it inside the church. This is about as close to a beer garden as you're going to get in Frankfurt. And those of you who've known me for a long time know I used to work on the grill, and I worked for a steakhouse. This used to be Moredo's, and I worked on the grill here. So up here on the roof, they'd been working on the roof for probably a good 3 years, and they were scheduled to take the crane down one day, and they thought, well, we'll do that tomorrow morning early. And they had this huge windstorm the night before, and the crane tipped over and knocked a hole in the roof. Ta-da! So that was a year ago, and they have to, it looks like they're still working on it. Just a view of the area. I'll walk around to the back of the church and see the other entrance. Thankfully, the rain stopped. It's just still not a pleasant day. And here comes the street cleaner. Right when I'm ready to talk about this door here. Here we go. Now, across the street, over here, this was the Jewish community in Frankfurt, and this is where the synagogue used to be. And so over here on the right, We have Joseph. And we know it's Joseph because he has on a Jewish hat. And he's got his tools. We can't see it very well from here because of the trees, etc., etc. But we do know it's Jewish. And we have all the prophets here on the door. So now we've completed our round outside and inside. And we're back to where we began. Now, one of the other things that Madern Gerthener put on here with all the little curly cues and everything was to make your eyes look up. It's sort of like a fountain, just to draw your eyes heavenwards. So, thanks a lot, and I hope you like this tour of the Frankfurt Kaiserdom, St. Bartholomews, and we'll see you again. Write your questions if you saw anything that I didn't explain very well, and I'll see if I can answer them. Bye.